Friends, if I could have your attention, please. We're going to begin the funeral service for Mr. Neal Tyson. If you have a cell phone, I'd ask you kindly to place it in the silent mode or turn it completely off at this time. I'd also like to welcome friends via live stream. On behalf of the family, thank you as well. Services will be conducted by Rabbi Evan Moffick of Macomb, Solal, Lakeside, and Highland Park. Also, if anybody needs additional seating, we did have extra seating in the smaller chapel. You can see the service on a large screen. If you'd be more comfortable instead of standing, you're welcome to do that as well. We are going to start with the ancient tradition of cutting of the kriya, so the rabbi will begin.
Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey. From childhood to maturity, and youth to age, from innocence to awareness, and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom. From weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat, to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. These words, which were penned by Rabbi Alvin Fine, really express the Jewish philosophy of life and of death. And they tell us that we come here in grief, but we also come here as much as we can with a measure of gratefulness. Grateful that God blessed the world with the life of Neal Tyson. Our Jewish funeral service is fairly simple. It consists of some reading, some psalms, some reflections, and concludes with the Kaddish prayer. We'll continue now with the words of the 23rd Psalm. If you know them, please feel free to join me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in straight paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. At the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. At the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. At the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember Neal Tyson, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joy we crave to share, we remember them. When we have decisions that are difficult to make, we remember them. As long as we live, Neal too shall live, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. I'd like to invite up several members of the family who will share their memories.
First, I wanted, on behalf of all of us, to thank you all for coming. And to all out there in TV land, thank you too. Whew. Okay, here we go. I just want to say thank you. First and foremost, thank you to my dad, who was my best teacher of life and my role model of being a parent and a spouse, especially. Thank you for being the best grampy to our children. Oh, I love you so much, Dad. Thank you for all of you that are here, for all your love and ongoing support. I know Dad had such a special place in everyone's heart. So again, I just wanted to thank you. Okay, next.
Hello, everyone. I'm Becca Hamburg. I'm Neal Tyson's second grandchild. Neal's Grampy or Gramps to me. He was one of my favorite people to spend time with, especially on the day of the week the NFL owns, Sunday. Every week, I would look forward to sitting in the living room or den with Gramps. If you've watched football with Grampy, you know you would be entertained, and it may or may not be by the actual football game. Gramps was not shy to use his voice to give the players, coaches, and refs his football wisdom. He was definitely an animated football viewer. I always knew Sundays with Grampy brought me joy, but I didn't realize how much until I went away to college and the first one without him came. So I made sure to continue watching football every Sunday I could, because then I would talk to him about the games. One of my main motives to come home was not my immediate family, but rather to watch football with Grampy. It really, really sucks that I won't be able to yell at the TV with him anymore. But he sure does know I will not stop watching. I didn't get to tell him this, but Josh created a fantasy football team for me. I have no idea what any of it means, but hey, Gramps, I apparently won the first matchup. On Monday night, Josh encouraged me to do something that Grampy would do and that would help us celebrate him. In turn, I immediately thought of football. Right when we were seated at the sports bar, a man started to walk towards my direction wearing a University of Illinois shirt. 3 minutes later, Aaron Rodgers was out for the season. It's nice to know you're still watching football with me, Gramps. And I know we'll have a lot of time to yell at them from afar.
My dad is going to deliver my speech for me.
I'm not gaming, I'm just using my cell phone for some notes here. Okay. 14 hours. That's the amount of time that passed since seeing you last until I got the call. Less than 1 day later, and you were gone permanently. When asked to write a speech, words escape me. I am really about to write a funeral speech for someone who's just in the other room. Oh, right, he's gone permanently. I have to keep telling myself that as it doesn't feel real, and it likely won't for a while. From our weekly check-ins at dinner to our early dawn texts, we could talk to each other endlessly. Whenever he answered the phone, I got excited because that meant I heard the, "Hello, gorgeous? Is that you?" And I would say, "It's me. Is that you?" And he would always respond, "It's me," with shared excitement. That's one of the many things I will miss. I'll of course miss his wet cheek kisses that I always had to wipe off, how he always wanted to hear about our travels and shows we saw. That was the only time he paused the Bears game on Sunday, not to eat dinner, but to hear about our New York adventures. How encouraging he was when I ever doubted myself professionally, and how unapologetically himself he was stubborn. As morbid as it may seem, we were just talking about funerals on Sunday evening. I know he would be so honored and happy to have all of the people he loves under one roof. I thank you all for your impact on him, on us, and on me. He was a great guy who meant a lot to a great deal of people. But hey, now it's time to get Bubby a pet. I love you forever, Grampy. With you watching from above, we'll take it from here and we'll be okay.
I'm Ian. I'm the youngest of the Hamburgs. I remember Grampy through his expertise in Rummikub. And the way he'd play the game is he'd hold all of his tiles until he could put them all down, and he'd always win. And I look at that as a way to remember his life. He'd hold in all of his complaints, all of his sorrows to himself. And he'd release all of his love and happiness for everyone. And that's just how he won life. I miss him a lot. Thank you.
So I'm Steve. I'm Betsy's husband. My mother died about 7 years ago, and her service was very sad. And I know that my mom wouldn't have wanted it that way, and I know that Neal, wouldn't want it that way either. So I'm going to try to add some levity to everything. With that said, I will tell you that my kids don't think I'm funny. So it's possible you might not either. The first time I met Neal was after Betsy had a really bad car accident, and we were in Kentucky at the time. And I had a lot of growing up to do at that point in my life. I was a jerk. I mean, it was amazing that Betsy liked me. But with that said, they drove in, and I think it was the day after the evening they arrived we got some pizza, and it was all the way down to the last piece, and without a second thought, I took the last piece. I mean, I was pretty hungry, and I wasn't aware. I didn't even think about it, but Betsy told me that Neal was pretty upset about it, and you know, he kind of gave me a look, and I just said, deal with it, you know. So I think the next time I saw him was when I drove Betsy up from Kentucky for Thanksgiving, and Neal was, you know, pretty focused on making sure that when he greeted me, he gave me a hat. And on the hat above the bill, so the front part up top, it had the words "deal with it." And so he wanted to make sure that I wore that hat around the house, and that was when I knew for sure that he definitely forgave me for that day. Neal was very gracious. So at the reception of our wedding, he pulls me aside. He had a few drinks. He was feeling pretty good. And he said, "Stephen, thank you." And I was like, "What do you mean? I mean, I should be thanking you. I mean, the ceremony was amazing. The reception was just getting started. It was incredible." And I was like, "Thank you." And he's like, "No, thank you. She's all yours, kiddo." And so he patted me on the back, and then he went back to get to the bar to get another drink. And it took me a few years to realize he was just kidding. Neal was very complimentary. So we were at a Cortese 4th of July picnic, and those picnics were unbelievable, and I look forward to eating all the Carol's cookies I could. And he complimented Betsy and I because he thought that we were doing such a great job with our kids. Betsy had a full-time job, and I traveled a lot. So it was very important to him, you know, to always let us know how good of a job we were doing. And I don't think it was 5 minutes after that this guy right here decided to, well, he was a little over 1, I think, and he had to go. So he just dropped his drawers and just went right there on the Cortese lawn. And then Neal was furious. He was like, "How could you possibly allow him to do that? This is absolutely unacceptable. You guys really need to rethink how you're parenting your kids." You know, hearing Becca talk about how, you know, Neal was a little animated when things didn't go as planned during Bears games and Cubs games. I mean, he's the most mild-mannered guy that I knew. And I mean, when I was with him watching these guys play, you know, he would take a bad play in stride, never said a peep, just said, "Hey, you know, things will get better." And he was always very supportive of his teams. And yes, I'm being very sarcastic when I say that. He was very humble. So I was fortunate to sell one of my companies, and he was integrally involved throughout that process, and went through near a year-long due diligence process, and finally the company that was going to buy my company presented an offer. And so I called him and I said, "Hey, Neal, I finally got the offer, and one of the options is to take some in cash and some in stocks." And I was like, "Well, you know, as a gesture of appreciation, I feel obligated to take some of that in stocks." And Neal was like, "Absolutely not. Take it all cash, everything." So about a year after they bought the company, Neal gives me a call and he says, "Hey, did you check out the market today?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Go check out the company that bought you." The stock dropped 70% in one day. And he said, "You know, you were very wise to listen to me." With that said, Neal was the first to make me feel welcomed in the family. It was very intimidating for me to enter a new family, and he just made it so easy. And he was very wise, and he helped me throughout my professional career. He helped me as an employee. He helped me as a business owner. And he also greatly helped me with life in general. He was genuinely interested in whatever I was interested in. And that meant a lot to me. So, like Betsy, I'd like to thank you as well, Neal. I always used to say he was my best or my favorite father-in-law, but he was definitely the best father-in-law anybody could have.
My father is dead, and I got a lot to say, so make yourselves comfortable. It's pretty safe to say that they won't be erecting any statues to Neal Tyson. He's not going to be on a postage stamp. And the highway bridges of Illinois are safe from being renamed after him. By historical judgments, probably not considered a great man, but he was a good man. He was a good son. Dad was a good son. Born the second son to Ty and Ad, he loved his parents. Ty owned the Southside Laundry at the time, which kept him pretty busy. And Ad was, let's call it a not focused parent, rather preferring to spend time drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes with her sister Gladys and their mother Lizzie, who lived a couple houses down. So it was a loose childhood from what we would consider today's standards. Side note here, Ad was so unaware that when Neal was 5, he climbed onto a Southside Laundry delivery truck that was parked in front of their house making a delivery of their clean laundry, and drove all the way from the north side to the south side in the delivery truck until Ty got a call saying, "Hey, we think your son's down in loading." Ad had no idea. It was just, it never even occurred to her. So regardless of that kind of loose upbringing, he loved his parents. He loved his parents. He lost his dad when he was 35. It hurt. And I was old enough to know, but young enough to not understand. And I saw the impact it had on him. But he took over, right? He and Max, of course, always Max. He and Max were there for Ad, and they cared for her for the rest of her life. Ad never remarried, and for the remaining 20 years of her life, they were her support. He was a good son. He was a good brother. He loved his older brother, Max. Francie and Mitch are here. Wherever Max was, Neal was never far behind. He joined Max's social club in high school, the Majestics at Senn. He joined Max's fraternity at U of I, Phi Up. He moved to the suburbs less than a block away from where Max and Sue had already moved. Where Max was, Neal was never far behind. In Max's waning years, when he was suffering from Parkinson's, I remember watching my dad and Max at dinner together, talking. And my dad leaned over and just started cutting up Max's food because it was too much for Max to do that at the time. The conversation never stopped. It never even occurred to anyone that this is anything but how a brother treats a brother. And to the end, he was a good brother. Dad was a good cousin. Ad's sister Gladys, who we mentioned earlier, along with Lizzie, the triumvirate there, they had 2 sons. I see one of them in the room with us today, Marty and Matty. And they were all born within 2 years of each other. So they were a set, right? At any given moment, you could hear one of the mothers screaming, "Marty, Matty, Max, Neal," trying to get them all to come for dinner. Like Max and Neal, Marty was a member of Phi Up, and When Dad joined Phi Up, he and Marty had a great idea. You see, back then, when they had dirty laundry, they didn't go like everyone else to the laundromat and clean their laundry. They put it in a box and they shipped it to Chicago, to the South Side Laundry, where they would do their laundry and then put it back in the box and ship it back to them. It occurred to Neal and to Marty, this is a money-making opportunity. And so they got all their fraternity brothers to pay them to ship their clothes up to Chicago. So 260-mile round trip, rather than any of them going 3 blocks over to the laundromat. But that was how they thought. So he was definitely a good cousin, and he loved his cousins. Dad was a good accountant. Dad wasn't a student. I think today we probably would have said he had dyslexia, but back then it just meant he was not a great student. BC student in high school. Back then you could still get into the University of Illinois with that kind of a background, and he did. But when he found accounting in college, it clicked, right? A bunch of rules. There's a right and a wrong. Credits to the window, debits to the door. All the things line up. The numbers tie. It made sense. So he was a good accountant, and his clients loved him. A bunch of his clients are in this room with us today. They loved him because he cared about them, right? I mean, my dad would push it all the way to the limit of the law, but never, ever go over the edge. And his clients knew that, and they knew they could trust him, that he wasn't going to leave a single stone unturned, but he was never going to put them at risk. He was always going to do what was best for them. And as a result, my dad kept clients for decades, and many of them became some of his best friends. So he was a good accountant. He was a good partner. Dad met Ron Catch after coming off a brief stint in the IRS and an even briefer stint working for another CPA firm. Ron, who was slightly older and I think definitely wiser at the time, saw something in Dad, and they formed a partnership. The two of them and their secretary Ruth started up their business, and they were together for over 30 years. And they ended up growing their business to over 30 people and hundreds of clients. He was a good partner. Dad was a good boss. Dad loved his staff, some of whom are with us here in the room today. He had pretty high standards, and like with his football teams, he could get frustrated if things weren't always up to his standards. But he was super loyal to his team, and they were loyal to him in return. I mentioned Ruth, the secretary they hired as their very first hire. She was with them 30 years. She grew from their secretary to the office manager of the entire practice. He loved his staff. He was a good boss. Well, maybe with the exception of that one time they hired the multi-state bank robber. But that didn't last long, so that's a story for another day. Dad was a good friend. Dad made friends easily, and once you're in with Dad, you're in. Many of his friends from high school remained his friends for life, the same with college and other points in his life. He was fiercely loyal to these friends and loved spending time with them. I mean, just as another example, he had a poker game with some people in this room that lasted over 25 years. I mean, who does that? He was a good friend. Dad was a good husband. Dad and Mom met the first day of homeroom at Senn High School. They built their relationship on the bedrock of a strong friendship, and they remained best friends their whole lives. Dad and Mom had a clear division of responsibility growing up. Betsy, Judy, and I were Mom's responsibility. Dad's job was to make the money and sometimes provide the discipline. But 60 years of marriage, you begin to, you evolve and you grow into each other and you round off each other's loose ends or sharp edges. And Dad became a more confident and engaged parent the older he became. And we'll talk a little more about him as a grandfather in a moment, but that's where a lot of that came through. And frankly, Mom got smarter about money. So everybody won. So Dad was a good husband. And Dad was a good grandfather. And you've heard some of it already. You'll hear some more. He changed his first diaper, not on one of his kids, but on my first kid, his first grandchild. That was the first diaper he ever changed. He loved being a grandfather. He reveled in the growth, accomplishments, and achievements of his grandkids. I will let them share their detailed experiences with him, but I never saw Dad so happy as he was when he was fully engaged with his grandkids. And I loved watching him connect and become a critical part of their lives. He was a good grandfather. And Dad was a good dad. We had a little trouble connecting at first. I was a bit of a bookish kid, not into all the sports that Dad loved so much. He had me try them all. I played hockey and football and baseball and soccer. But as I grew, and as Dad grew, we kind of grew together. The first inkling of who we would become was in my high school. Dad, as you guys know, loved television. I think that's unabashedly one of his primary characteristics. And he, like me, is a bit of a night owl. So he would be watching TV late at night, and on Sunday nights, I would come down because I'm a night owl too, and we started watching TV together. First reruns of Monty Python, then Doctor Who, then old Star Trek. It was really great. It gave us a language, something to relate to each other. And then we really hit our stride when I went to U of I and majored in business and sat for my CPA. Suddenly, a whole side of him that I didn't have access to before was now mine. And really, it was terrific. So a lot of business talk created a new basis for our friendship and our relationship kept growing from there. He was my primary advisor about how to be an employee, then how to be a boss, then how to be a business owner. He gave me advice about being a husband when I asked, and about being a father, some of it in the negative. But I just can't imagine how my days are going to end now, that I can't call him and tell him what happened in my day and what help I might need. He was my best and most devoted friend. So, Dad was the greatest of good men, and I will dearly miss him. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tyrus Tyson. I'm Neal's oldest granddaughter. My grandfather was there for me my whole life. He's in all of my memories. My dad just mentioned he was a night owl. He took great joy in always being the first to text us happy birthday, often at midnight. And I was a night owl too. And my grandfather had a very hard time in school. And when I started having a hard time in school too, when I was in graduate school, and I would be up very, very late studying and bashing my head against the wall, he was always also awake. And he would text me, and he would hear from my parents when I had a test coming up. And he would text me and ask how I was doing. And when the answer was bad, he'd be like, "You just have to hang in there, baby. Just keep trying. You're doing your best. That's all that matters." One of the stories that I like to share a lot about my grandfather is when he found out I was gay. I was not actually there. He never called me. He never said anything. But the next time I came to Chicago, I was sitting next to him in the den, and we were watching the news. And we were watching his favorite show, as you all know, the Rachel Maddow show. He was like, "That's Rachel Maddow.
She's so smart. She always knows what's going on. She has a wife. And the next time I came down, several months later, I think it was the WNBA championships, and he was like, "That's super. She's Jewish." She's married. She's married to a woman. And that was exactly who he was. It wasn't complicated to him. He loved me. He loved everything about me. There was no question. He loved us. He loved me. He loved my sisters. He loved all of my cousins. And we were always first to him, and there was never a question. There was nothing that was more important than us. Nothing was more important than his family, and we never questioned that. And when we found out that he passed, the first thing that everybody said when we called was, "I hope you know he loved you so much. He loved you. He would want you to know how loved you were." And the truth is, we never questioned him. It was a fact of life for us. He was always there. And he was always there for us, and he loved us very much. Hi, I'm Avery. I'm the youngest of Gary's kids. When I was only a year old, my family packed up and we left Chicago. We moved to North Carolina. And despite being so far away, it never felt like my grandpa was far away or that we had this long distance relationship. Grandpa, from the very beginning, taught us just the importance of showing up, and that's exactly what he did. He showed up for every single dance performance and play, and there were so many. And anything from when I was a little chick playing Little and in The Wizard of Oz to when I was in Cabaret, and that is not a show that he would have chosen to go see otherwise. He joined our Halloween parties, grilled chicken for 200 annoying little kids, and he came every other year to Thanksgiving, Bald Hat Island, and even though we were 800 miles away, Grampy never felt 800 miles away. He was just a phone call away. He'd always pick up. And I'll just always take the lesson of not just showing up, but being present and caring about who you're with. And I just love that today everyone showed up for him. So, yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Jaren. I'm the middle of Gary's kids. This morning, I sat for the first time ever in Grampy's recliner. I've spent a lot of time adjacent to that recliner, sandwiched between Bubby and Grampy, watching TV, talking about work and school and friendships, working on Sudoku puzzles, and reminiscing. But I never sat there before. It was his special place. As I sat down, I looked around at what he looked at every day. Of course, the TV was there, ready to show MSNBC. Every time Rachel Maddow would talk about the Michigas and the government, he'd give me a little nudge. "See," he'd say, "she's so bright. She uses Yiddish like a Jew." And everywhere, on every side of me, were pictures of us. All of his children and grandchildren. A t-shirt quilt with half a dozen world's best grandpa shirts. Hats from our alma maters. Everywhere I looked, his love for us was reinforced. He also had tributes to things he loved. A book on tennis, which we used to play every summer. He would come to my practices and help me set up the ball machine and perfect my swing. A blown glass tropical fish from his days as a scuba diver. When I got my scuba certification, we sat down and talked for hours about gear, techniques, his best dives, and all of his fantastic memories. Every time I've dived, I always make sure to make a video to send to him so we can go over slow breathing and proper form. A stack of Broadway musical CDs, which we used to listen to together on car rides to and from the airport or back and forth from the beach for our Thanksgiving vacations. a Mickey Mouse figurine from our family trip to Disney World, where he lit up watching his grandchildren run around the park like tiny, sugar-fueled tornadoes. And next to my right hand was the phone he used to talk to me whenever we were apart. I called him when I started my first accounting class, and he was so excited to share his love for business. When I started working for my dad, he would end every phone conversation by saying, "Hey, is your boss being nice to you? Is he working you too hard?" I can give him a stern talking to. It's funny that we said the exact same thing, but as I've spoken to people since Grampy's passing, everyone has said he loved you so much. And just like my sister said, oh, we knew. He let us know every day. Through his actions, through his words, and through his sincere interest in everything we loved. Nothing made me happier than finding new shared passions with him as I grew and explored the world. I'm so incredibly grateful for my time with him.
Hi everyone, my name is Lexi Plonsker and I was Grampy's youngest grandchild. I just wanted to share some of my favorite memories with him. He was there for me every summer afternoon when I was younger, when two of my closest friends and I needed a ride home from day camp. Every afternoon, we would run to the pickup line and see his Cadillac waiting there for us. We'd climb in, eager to see Grampy's smiling face and tell him what we had done that day. Each day we'd beg and do our very best to trick him into getting us ice cream. One of my favorite attempts was giving him the address to Mike's Ice Cream and saying Sarah had moved. With a smile on his face, he said he'd take us there, and we ended up promptly in Sarah's driveway. On the last day of camp each summer, he would finally take the three of us to get ice cream. Emily, Sarah, and I were always his girls, a title we carry with pride. He was there for us when we needed a father figure to look up to. I found myself without a father when I was only 9 years old, but Grampy was there for us through it all. Despite being lost, confused, and scared about what my future was going to look like, Grampy helped our family navigate through this difficult time. He taught me how a true father figure is supposed to act. He was there for me when he would teach me lessons without even realizing it. Grampy was a big Bears fan, as we all know, and despite this, I still had no clue how football worked. I would watch games during our weekly Sunday dinners, asking question after question so I could understand what was going on. Just last week, when I attended my high school's football game, I was shocked with just how much I knew. Other than sports, he taught me what it means to be family, to be there for someone through thick and through thin, to be there for them every step of the way. Thank you.
To begin, I'd like to thank all the family and friends who traveled far and wide to remember and honor the life of Grampy. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Johnny, and I had the privilege of being Grampy's youngest grandson for all of my 19 years. Grampy was a man of extraordinary character, a devoted husband, a proud father, and a wise grandfather. His life was a living testament to the essence of a hero, but more than that, he embodied everything I aspire to be. I remember Grampy cheering me on along the sideline during every soccer match for 14 incredible years. With each cheer and every word of encouragement, he not only celebrated my goals, but also championed my spirit. I remember Grampy picking me up each Wednesday in high school to have lunch together at Mean Wiener. 3 chicken tacos for me and 2 beef tacos on a flour tortilla for Grampy were the ritual. But they were just a prelude to the hours of profound discussions that followed. Politics, sports, and a treasure trove of stories were always on the menu. As the tacos dwindled, I found myself gaining not just a full stomach, but a suitcase filled with life lessons for the future. I remember when times were tough, Grampy became my guiding light. He taught me to stand tall when the world seemed insurmountable, showing me that kindness, empathy, and compassion were the cornerstones of a life well lived. More importantly, his actions always spoke louder than his words, leading by example in every way. As I stand here today, I am filled with countless life lessons and wisdom Grampy has imparted to me. He may no longer be with us, but his legacy lives on in my heart and in the hearts of all who had the privilege of knowing him. Grampy, you're more than a grandfather. You are my hero, my mentor, and my friend. Rest in peace, Grampy, knowing that your love was timeless. Your love and timeless teachings will continue to guide me as I navigate this world. I will always love you.
Hi, I'm Kurt. I'm Judy's oldest. I beat Mark by 3 minutes. And I just want to say a few words about Grampy and the evolution of that name. This name has meant different things to me throughout my life. When I was little, it referred to the man with the gray mustache that would try to hug and kiss me when I was younger. The man would show up at every AYSO soccer game I played, no matter how horribly we'd lose. And he was also at every band concert, robotics tournament, and speech tournament I ever had. My mom told me his name was Grampy. I thought this was a very weird name for someone, but everyone around me seemed cool with it, so I just went along. According to my mom, this man was important. I would see him with all my cousins, aunts, and uncles, but at the time, he was still just the man with the gray mustache, ever present and always demanding a kiss on the cheek. Jumping ahead to a few years when I was 10, I finally figured out that the man with the gray mustache was my grandfather. Who knew? And that Grampy was what he preferred to be called. I started to understand that he was one of the main characters of my family. We celebrated his birthday, we went for countless dinners at his house, and traveled together. I saw him in North Carolina, Disney World, Michigan City, and Mark and I even started playing tennis with him every week. Grampy now was a part of my family, the person to whom I'd hug and kiss when I saw him. This name would change its meaning again. When I was 15, I found myself without a father figure. It was an unstable, frightening, and overwhelming period. However, throughout it all, Grampy was there, mustache and all. When I felt overwhelmed, Bubby and Grampy's was a place of refuge. It became my safe space. After school, Grampy was there in his Cadillac waiting to pick me up. When I had questions about everything from what do I say to when I'm emailing a teacher to how to shave, Grampy was there to answer. He taught me what my priorities should be when I was being ridiculous, no matter what I was doing, and no matter what happens, everything will work out in the end. He stepped in as the father figure I desperately needed during this period of my life, and for that, I will be forever grateful. More currently, Grampy evolved one more time. It became the name of one of my closest friends. Whether it was watching Sunday Night Football, going to lunch at one of his main spots, or just hanging out together in the den, he was a part of my week I looked forward to. Every time I learned something new in class, I would call him up and excitedly blabber on about it until I got that, Kurt, this is way over my head, which meant he was tired of my rambling. He was always in my corner and someone whom I loved to spend time with. Grampy has meant a lot of things to me. The man with the weird name at my soccer games, the grandfather of my family, a father figure, and ultimately, a friend. I'm so lucky to have been blessed with such an amazing grandpa. I can only hope I can follow in his footsteps. I love you, Grampy. Thank you.
Okay, hi. I'm Mark. Thanks for coming today, everybody. I'm Kurt's twin, but probably the better one. So we're honoring my grandfather, Neal, today, or as I knew him, Grampy. I'm one of Judy's oldest, one of the twins, as he often referred to me. I'm sure as all his friends knew. And I had the pleasure of calling Grampy one of my best friends in his later years. You've heard a lot today about how hard Grampy worked, or how stubborn he was, or even how hot-headed he could be from time to time. But I'm here today to tell you about a softer Grampy, someone in their twilight years, happy with the life he had built for him and his family. The last few months, I was regularly with Grampy, having graduated from college, oftentimes 2-3 times a week, usually more. And I could tell you with complete certainty that he was content with his life. He talked to me about how happy he was, that even when someone in our family was facing something hard, like Tyne in residency or Johnny studying at college and taking on research, he knew that it would all be fine because everything always works itself out. Friday lunches, Sunday dinners often spiraled into hours-long conversations filled with advice from his life, recanting details of him courting Bubby, his adventures with his friends, or raising his family. My family would be surprised to hear how often he swore with me in his twilight years. Talked about emotional and taboo topics that he usually didn't, and even gave relationship advice from time to time. Grampy had become softer in his later years, and I was fortunate enough to witness it firsthand. Grampy was a man who lived life on his own terms, doing what he wanted when he wanted. Whether it came to eating what he wanted, which was usually meat, potatoes, and a Diet Coke, definitely no green stuff, being where he wanted, always his recliner in the den, and with who he wanted, his family and friends. He was absolutely certain in himself and his decisions. Grampy was the father figure I didn't have growing up. When things got hard, he was there, steadfast and consistent. He taught me what it meant to be a man, a grandpa, a dad, and most importantly, a friend. When people ask me who I want to be like when I grow up, as the time-old question is, I know for sure now. Grampy. Thank you all for coming.
I'm the last one. I'm his baby. I'm Judy. Because I'm the youngest, I kind of had a different relationship with Dad than my sister and brother had. I spent a lot of time alone with him and Mom. We would travel. We had many adventures there. And he wasn't working as much. So he got to hang out with my friends, who he would call his girls. Before then it went to Lexi and her friends, his girls. And they meant the world to him because his friends meant the world to him. His clients meant the world to him. His coworkers, people were very important to him. And he tried to teach us that people are important. Stuff comes and goes, people do not. And he always tried to be a stand-up person. So I'm gonna try and skip through a lot of stuff because my siblings have all taken a lot of what I was gonna say. So let me go. So as many of you know, my father was an extremely special person. We had a lot in common. And we saw things very similar, sometimes to my mom's chagrin. Mom would get frustrated with me and say, "You're just like your father." It was a unique relationship. One memory was that he always made a huge effort to get to my field hockey games in high school because he noticed the coach put me in more when he was there. So he made sure he'd get there no matter what was happening. Dad, you and Mom have been my safety net, my security blanket, my go-to people through all the difficult and challenging times. I honestly can say in front of everyone here, I could not have survived sometimes without the both of you. When I didn't have the strength, your love would carry me through. When I was scared out of my mind and worried about how I was going to do this, you guys were always there for me. Raising these four, as great as they are, is not easy. You led by example to my kids what it was meant to be a dad, what is meant to be a husband, what is meant to be a friend, especially what it's like to be a good person in general. Facing challenges all by myself, I never felt alone. I always had you and Mom. You would be there for me no matter what, no matter how afraid and scared the future looked. Dad's legacy is not just to his family and his friends, and his role extends to role as his friends. He had so many friends, as he could see today. He would hate us all talking about this in those mushies. Dad would not be happy, but I would be remiss if I did not tell the people here. I had lunch with my father. I was very fortunate, and every single Friday, we had a standing lunch date. And I would drive every day to work. He was my phone call. I drove home from work. He was my phone call. So he would talk about all of you many, many times with me, and it was always fun to hear. He had a very special skill of making everyone feel like they were special. No one who had an interaction with him left the experience without a big smile on his face. He would remember things and talk about them and make the people feel good and remember their names. As everyone has mentioned, my father also was a very hard worker. During accounting season, he would work most nights and Saturdays. When Catch Tyson and Company was in the city, living that life, he never saw the three of us. So before there was work from home, he would work from home one day. So that way, at least he could see Betsy, Gary, and I for a little bit. He approached his work with integrity and unwavering commitment to excellence. His colleagues admired him for his dedication, his passion for his field, and his ability to lead by example. He left a lasting impact on those he worked with. Beyond his professional achievements, Dad had a deep love for life. He cherished simple moments, finding joy and beauty of nature, the sound of music, and company of loved ones. He had a unique ability to make us laugh, even in the most challenging times, reminding us that humor is a powerful tool of resilience. His presence in our lives was a constant source of strength, a reassuring voice in times of doubt, a warm embrace when the world felt cold. He always made me feel as if I was not alone. We talked, as I said, all the time, and he always made me laugh and smile. His love knew no bounds. He demonstrated every day to me through his actions, his words, and his unwavering devotion to each member of our family. I believe my incredible children would not be who they are today if it was not for my dad and mom. Words can never explain how very thankful I am that I had you. I can say I truly enjoyed every minute I had. I know my dad went out exactly the way he wanted, but I wanted more time. I know it's selfish, but I'm not ready to give him up. He is my rock, my protector, my hero and best friend. I can only hope he knew how much I loved him. Thank you all for coming. This would mean a lot to him.
Such moving and powerful words, memories. And I'll simply add this Jewish story where it's found in the Talmud, and the rabbis are debating, as they often do, the most important quality of a human being. One rabbi says a good eye. It means you can see into the future. They all say, yep, that's a good quality. Another rabbi says, a good friend. And they say, yeah, that's a good quality too. Another says, a good community. Means you live in a nice place and have friends and so forth. And they say, that's true also. That's good. And then the greatest rabbi of them all, Rabbi Akiva, says, a good heart. Because a good heart encompasses everything that matters. And as we just heard so eloquently, Neal Tyson had a wonderful heart, a heart that was dedicated to his family, to his work, to his clients, to his friends, a heart that really, as we hear, knew no bounds in what he would do to help his family. A heart that was honest and direct, trustworthy. In Jewish tradition, the way we honor a loved one, the way we remember them, is by saying the words, Zichrono livracha. May his memory be a blessing. And these words convey the purpose of a well-lived life. That those who know you, those who come after you, those who remember you, look to your life as a blessing, a benediction, and an inspiration. Being a blessing means that you have touched the lives of those you knew and that you have helped them to do the same for others. For Myrna, and Betsy, and Gary, and Judy, for Becca, and Allie, and Ian, and Tyne, and Jaron, and Avery, and Kurt, and Mark, and Johnny, and Lexi. For all of his friends and families and clients and loved ones. For all those whose lives he touched and who touched his. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. May the memory of Neal Tyson endure among us as an everlasting blessing. God, you give us loved ones, and you make them the strength of our life and the light of our eyes. They depart and leave us bereft on a lonely way, but you are the living fountain from which our healing flows. God, we look to you for comfort, for consolation, as we rise now and recite the words of the El Mole Rachamim. El Mole Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Amtsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Shechinaim, Kidoshim V'Tehorim, Kazohar Hakim Asirim, at Nishmat, Neal Tyson, Shahalach La'olamo, Baharachamim Yasdirehu Beseter Kanafav La'olamim, Vayitzror B'Turchaim et Nishmato, Adonai Hunachalato, V'Yanuach B'Shalom, Amishkavo V'Nomar, Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to our beloved husband, father, grandfather, brother, loved one, friend, Neal Tyson, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and may his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. For you, the eternal God, are his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us all say, Amen. Our final prayer is the Kaddish prayer, our traditional Jewish prayer of mourning. It's a prayer that reminds us that the way we remember a loved one is by remembering their most wonderful qualities and seeking to integrate them into our own lives. So as is ancient Jewish tradition, we say together, Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei rabbah, be'alma divra chirute, be'amlich malchute, b'chayechon v'yomechon, uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uvisman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shemei rabbah mivorach leolam olamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudusha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushvechata v'nechemata. Damiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. O say shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May God, the source of peace, send peace to all of us who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved, and let us all say, Amen.
This does conclude the service here at the chapel. The family will be sitting Shiva at the Tyson residence, 555 Cypress Point Court in Deerfield. And that'll be beginning tonight. Riverwoods. What did I say? Deerfield, I'm sorry, Riverwoods. They'll be starting tonight at 6:30 until 9 p.m. And then tomorrow it'll be 1 p.m. until 3:30, and then 6:30 until 9 p.m. again. So they're today starting at 6:30. Just keep that in mind, please, so the family has a little private time. There also is valet parking available when you go to their home, so keep that in mind as well. At this point, I would ask again, I know we just sat down, please rise as we escort the family from the chapel.